If you watched a certain earlier video, you will know that I have recently read Jerry Coyne's 2009 book, Why Evolution is True. You might recall that I stated my purpose for reading it as part of my ongoing search for great books on evolution to recommend to others who have an interest in it but don't think they really understand it all that well. I've also argued that all freethinkers and skeptics should have a good basic understanding of evolution. First of all, it's personally fulfilling and extremely gratifying to learn as much as we can about the natural universe that we live in. Secondly, evolution has become the single greatest point of contention with nearly all theists, but most especially with those who continue to take the more dogmatic, literal understanding of whatever religion they're resigned to. Therefore, it's critical for free thinkers to be able to confidently state some of the basic facts of evolution should one ever encounter a fundamentalist. While you might not convince the person, in fact you probably won't, you will give them something to consider, show them that it's far from an easy task to discredit evolution with the worn-out arguments they endlessly offer, and you might even convince a third party who's just listening in. With that said, I can now highly recommend this book to you if you fit my description of the type of person who could benefit from such reading. It's immensely comprehensible, written for the lay reader, a lot of fun, and quite short. Even a slow reader like me can read it in 2 or 3 days if you get hooked on the material. But even in taking your time, reading just a chapter per evening, which is about 20 pages, you'll finish it in less than a week and a half. When you're done, I can assure you that you'll have both a solid understanding of the massive evidence for evolution, as well as a good idea on how to defend it in a casual debate or discussion. Other books of this nature that I would recommend include Climbing Mount Improbable by Richard Dawkins, Your Inner Fish by Neil Shubin, The Beak of the Finch by Jonathan Weiner. But I'll tell you, Coyne's book might be the best and most up-to-date of all these. And if anybody's interested in more advanced but still highly accessible books on evolution, I'd suggest going to my channel page and scouting out my favorite books. And also I'd be happy to make additional recommendations via PM to anybody who wants them. Okay, with that out of the way, I wanted to make this video as a look at just one small but irrefutable piece of evidence. I found this really fascinating due to Coyne's claim that it is one of those things that is rarely brought up, even though creationists have virtually no reply to the force of the evidence behind it. So from his chapter on biogeography called The Geography of Life, there's a subsection called Islands. Well, let's take a look at what Coyne says we can learn from oceanic islands. Life appears in the oceans, in the air, on the continents, on continental islands, and on oceanic islands. A continental island, like Great Britain or Japan, is an island that was once part of the larger continent that usually sits somewhere nearby. The oceanic islands, on the other hand, were formed from volcanic activity. Now, continental islands have the usual complete chain of life abounding on them that you would find on the nearby continent. The life has always evolved and looks different than the mainland species. And indeed, these species are different, but genetically, their closest living relatives are always the life of the continent that they broke away from when the landmass became an island. As you might suspect, the oceanic island starts off with no life at all. It's barren and waiting to be populated, either by some type of a creator or by natural processes. It's very interesting what specific types of life a creator would have put on these oceanic islands. Time after time, they're missing certain types of life. They have virtually no populations of mammals, amphibians, freshwater fish, or reptiles. Now, there are exceptions, and we'll cover those. Instead, they're populated by plants, birds, and insects. Now, why do you suppose a creator would do that? This supposed creator didn't have any prohibitions against any type of life form when placing them on continental islands. One might argue that the creator simply knew that certain forms don't do well on oceanic islands and in its infinite wisdom didn't place any there. But the problem with this is mankind has put them there, and they do exceedingly well. When aggressive foreign species are introduced, they often drive others, or at least some of the others, to extinction. The birds, plants, and insects that are commonly found on oceanic islands radiate into many different species, covering all the ecological niches available, including niches that would otherwise be filled by mammals, reptiles, etc. On the Galapagos Islands, a single pioneering colonist finch has evolved into many species, none of which are found anywhere else in the world, and specializing in various tasks. There are finches that fill the task of eating small seeds, large seeds, insectivores, bloodsuckers, woodpecker, etc. And remember, these are all species of finch, and none of them are found anywhere else, and their closest living relatives are the finches that are right there on the island. On the Hawaiian Islands, there are nearly 1,000 different species of the evolutionarily famous fruit fly Drosophila. Now, what's so amazing about this? Well, while Hawaii is just a tiny bit of the Earth's total landmass, it has nearly half of the total species of Drosophila in the entire world. And it's only on oceanic islands that you will see small flowering plant species that have evolved to the size of trees. And that's because there's no competition from trees, and some of the plants fill that niche. So again, why would a creator put no woodpeckers or trees, for example, on oceanic islands, while completely happy to do so on continental ones, and instead put species of finch or hibiscus found nowhere else in the world to fill the exact same ecological niche as a woodpecker or a tree? With no apparent answers for why a creator would put only birds, insects, and plants on oceanic islands, we can say why this would be so via evolution. Think about it. These are species that can actually get to those remote outcroppings on their own. Birds and insects through flight and being windblown, and plants via seeds floating in the ocean or in the defecant of birds. And this is not just some just so story. There's plenty of experimental and real-world evidence for this type of dispersal. Recall that earlier I said there were some exceptions. One of the few tree exceptions on volcanic isles is the coconut tree. Any guesses how that could have happened? Bats are a mammal, and they are the only terrestrial mammal found on volcanic islands. Why would a creator place no mammals on an oceanic island except the one mammal capable of journeying there? And of course, those bats have evolved into species found nowhere else. The only other mammals are, not surprisingly, marine mammals. The tortoises and iguanas of the Galapagos are among the rare exceptions when it comes to reptiles. Species of both just happen to be found in Ecuador, which just happens to be the closest continental location to the Galapagos. So some founder populations made their way over the mere 600 miles, probably floating on vegetation. Again, this is a principle that has been observed in nature elsewhere. While you can't expect this to work in a place like Hawaii, which is thousands of miles from a continent, the 600 miles of the Ecuadorian coast was no great obstacle, given the hundreds of thousands of years of opportunity. As Darwin himself noted, why would the species which are supposed to have been created in the Galapagos and nowhere else bear so plainly the stamp of affinity with those created in America? Again, if a creator had something special in mind for islands, why would it treat oceanic islands any differently from continental ones? Why would patterns seen over and over on volcanic islands not be the pattern observed on continental islands? As Coyne so mischievously answers, there are no good answers, unless you presume that the goal of the creator was to make species look as though they had evolved on islands.